Hi everyone. It's Friday night. It's that time of week. It's our 7 o'clock lockdown webinar, and we're really pleased today to be welcoming a guest from very far afield. We have Anna MacDonald, who's actually an Australian violinist and performance coach, but she's actually in Armenia at the moment. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a picture of where she is, because the view out of her window is unbelievable. That is Mount Ararat in Armenia, and that's what Anna can see right now. Unfortunately, we can't see her. Her computer's misbehaving.
Technically, Mount Ararat is now in Turkey.
Anna.
But anyway, just thought I'd mention it's now in Turkey, but it's like, it looks like we could walk to it from here.
Oh gosh, is that far away? But it does look close, doesn't it? Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Anna. You're a legend.
My pleasure.
And of course, Laura, not quite such an impressive distance away from us, but so glad to have you here again. Thanks for joining us. And Phil Ed. Phil, who have you brought this evening with you? Mascot tonight is who?
Oh, this is Taff, the dog.
Oh, from Cardiff, is it?
Well, from Pontypridd, actually, which is where I grew up. And the River Taff ran past my house. So
lovely. So we're going to be talking about a couple of things this evening, but the main one, the reason that Anna's joined us, is because we wanted to talk to you about how you and your students deal with performance nerves, for want of a better word. It's not always, it doesn't always feel like nerves. You know, it can feel like being over analytical. Some people get shaky. Some people just can't sort of produce what they produce in the bedroom or the practice room on the concert stage. And so, Anna, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your method for helping people in that situation.
I think the point of it is that we spend a lot of time looking for validation outside ourselves. And we spend so much of our preparation thinking about doing this technically and doing that musically and pleasing this person, doing what our teacher told us, doing the right thing for the audience. We forget to look inside ourselves at what's actually going on within us when we're preparing the music. And if we're really not present to ourselves, then any little thing going wrong or any little change can bring all sorts of activity in our nervous system. But if we practice presence in the practice room, including learning about our inner critic, we develop a real stability and a real calm and a peace inside ourselves, because we know ourselves a lot better. So the inner critic, which is basically the internalized voices of our parents, of our teachers, which we hear so many times, we internalize it and we think it's us. We think that these critical messages are part of us. But when we can actually stop, be present to what those messages are saying to us, you'll never be good enough, your technique is not up to it, you're not ready for this concert. When we can stop and be present to how we react to these voices, that stopping and watching ourselves, we go into a deeper level inside ourselves. And that deeper level becomes our own emotional holding space, which is our place of stability from where we can perform.
You have a rather interesting story, Anna, about when you were playing in a Bach Festival, and you said it was the first time you realised what your inner voice was saying to you, why it was becoming a problem. Perhaps you could share that with us.
I was invited to play a couple of, I did 2 Bach partitas for a Bach Festival, and I was working on this inner critic work, and in my preparation, pretty much decided I was going to do something different. Instead of focusing on the future performance, I was going to focus on how the music affected me every time I played it, and my entire experience playing the Bach. So I had a fantastic time doing all this preparation. When I went to this town, this city in Australia for the festival, I started to feel really nervous, like what have I done? Am I really prepared? I've never done this before. Am I safe? And I did some kind of slow practice the day before, and then on the day of the performance, I was feeling really jittery and really kind of unsure of myself. And I thought, okay, I'm going to listen into the inner critic now. So half an hour before the performance, I said to myself, just what is happening inside me? What is my inner critic saying to me? And what came to me was, you shouldn't show the audience your dark side. You shouldn't show them all those emotions inside yourself. It's not okay. And I thought, is that what it is? And then I felt, no, it's okay. You know, this is just my inner critic, and I'm going to let them have it. I'm going to just let them have everything. And that's what I did. And because of that freedom I gave myself, I was very, very, just incredibly focused. I just enjoyed the whole thing, and the audience just rose to their feet at the end of it. And I felt so connected with them.
And then the next year you were stopped in the street.
The next year I was invited back to the festival, and I was walking through the streets of Armadale, the city, and a man came up to me and he said, are you Anna MacDonald who played that Bach concert last year? And I said, yeah. And he said, that was one of the most spiritual experiences of my entire life. And yeah, I thought to myself, this is something, you know, this really is something, you know, it's working in some way.
Absolutely fantastic. Laura, how do you feel when you're performing? Have you ever come across, does your dark side get in the way?
Well, I think what Anna said about the freedom to do things is a huge, huge thing, because people do get caught up in what's expected, or what they think is expected of them. Yeah. And I had my teacher I studied with longest, Hans Jensen, I never heard him perform. And one of the things that meant is all of his students, certainly at the time, I mean, obviously he did perform and he has since, but they had to have a vision of what they wanted. And that was something he taught everyone, you know, have a vision of what is your sound going to be? What are you going to do? And I think planting that inside of me and other students was a great bonus. So not that it's always successful, certainly, but, you know, in performing, I think that's probably one of the goals. It's the what's to get to the inside and let that be the thing that comes out, as opposed to doing something that somebody else expects, because that's never really authentic.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the vision is that part of kind of going inside yourself and saying, what do I really want? What do I really want? And I suppose the extra thing that the way that that I've kind of worked it out is that in that process, in practicing, when you actually say, as well as having my vision, I'm also just going to actually listen to what my inner critic is saying. And when you learn to accept what it's saying and stop reacting to it, and really go into a bit of like, how is it affecting my body? You know, how is it affecting the atmosphere inside myself? And it can be really nonverbal things. You can feel like you've got a black box in your left shoulder. You know, you can feel like your whole body has become, you know, shimmering. You know, all sorts of things can happen. The more you allow yourself to fall into those states without controlling, you tend to then find qualities within yourself that can add more to your performance. So I think a lot of the time we don't really know what's inside us. And what I found, one of the things that happened one day was I realized that I never allowed myself to really have a sound that was really luminous, because I didn't feel like that kind of person. I felt like I was a bit of a shy Australian girl. I can't have this gorgeous luminous sound. And when I realized that, then it was like, actually I can. And people started saying to me after that, my God, what's happened to your sound? You know, it actually really changed. So this is what I mean. We don't always know what's inside us.
So Anna, a lot of people listening tonight, pretty much all of them, are string teachers, and they'll be teaching students of different ages. Now, I remember very clearly the moment nerves kicked in for me, playing the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, age 13, and suddenly I suddenly wasn't what I'd ever known before. It was like somebody else's hands. If you're teaching people who reach that point, what advice would you give them?
I mean, I think the more you understand your own inner critic as a teacher, the more you can tune into what's happening for your student. And it's your own, you know, it's when you're not judging. You don't judge yourself, you don't judge the student, but you just become curious what's happening. You know, if I had been your teacher, I would have asked you questions, you know, what's going on? You know, what happened to make you feel this way? And I would have probably tried to really draw you out what was actually going on, so that perhaps you could have resolved it within yourself, you know, at that moment. I mean, I've done a lot of teaching young children, actually, and I do find the more I do the inner critic work on myself, the more I just accept them. And one example of this was a young boy who was having a lot of problems at school. And with me, he was only 6, I think, when he started with me. And I used to just get him improvising on the piano. This is some piano teaching I was doing. He would improvise, crashing up and down the piano. And I'd say to him, oh, so what was happening in that improvisation? He'd say, oh, a monster was attacking another monster and it killed this one. And then this one killed that one. It was all vicious and violent stuff. And I'd go, wow, that's great, fantastic. And I just didn't judge him. And I tell you, after he got all of that out of his system, a year later, he was my best student. He would learn every piece. He loved his practice. He just felt like the piano was his instrument. He could express himself. And that really taught me a lesson, just not to judge children. They all have their way of finding their relationship to the instrument, you know?
Yeah. We were just chatting before we came into this webinar.
Yeah.
We were talking about our own personal experiences of how we feel when we perform. And I have to say, Phil, I was very interested to hear how you feel when you perform. Because Phil is not only, you know, total global dominating master of the European String Teachers Association, CEO, but also a very fine violinist. And yet, when you play on stage, what goes through your mind, or in an audition?
Well, it's been a number of years since I've been lucky enough to audition, but yes, we were talking about nerves, and to me, the audience doesn't factor into how I'm feeling about my playing. It's purely how I feel about myself and how I feel about playing in front of my colleagues, and the desperation that it's got to be absolutely right, or I'll be, you know, I'll just feel foolish. But at no point do I ever give a thought to the audience. And I guess some people, as I said, as you said, Nicole, earlier on, that you don't like playing in front of small groups, but you don't mind playing in front of thousands of people. At what point does the small group become a large group? To me, it's just numbers, and to me, the playing is so personal that I find that's where the stress. It's completely self-inflicted, as most of these things are. It's just my inner feeling that I must not mess this up. It's got to be right. It's got to be as I want it to be, as I've been practicing, as I've been preparing for it. And it's quite elating when that all works out. But when it doesn't, and you've got a passage to play and you're all on your own and it's not going very well, crawling out of that is the hardest thing to do. And if Anna's got any tips on that, I'd be most grateful.
What do you do, Anna, when it goes wrong? You think you've prepared well, and suddenly in the middle of a performance, something goes wrong.
Well, this is the thing, you know, if something goes wrong, it goes wrong. But I think if you are in touch with that music in a deeply personal place, you have something to stay with. You can put your mind on something else. And, you know, for me, I always have to kind of find a key in the music that is my holding place, is my place of stability with that music. And it might be a feeling I have about the music, but I find it's not a superficial thing. It's found through each time I'm playing the music, I'm going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the music. So that if something does go wrong, it doesn't matter so much, because I know that what I'm expressing is really not about each individual passage, if that makes sense. So it's not just a simple switch of thinking. It's the preparation that goes on in the practice that means that you're dropping into that music more and more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to the level that, you know, even the colleagues, having colleagues listening, it becomes a kind of, well, I feel vulnerable exposing myself to people in this way, because I'm going into my real feelings here, but I'm going to actually take the risk of being vulnerable about that, because ultimately they are going to enjoy it. You know, everybody actually appreciates seeing that vulnerability and hearing that authentic feeling. So it is a win-win situation in the end.
And when we were talking the other day, you gave me a wonderful description about the ego, the superego, and the id. Have I got that right?
Very good. Very good.
It was so interesting. I wonder if you could just really briefly.
Yeah, sure.
I'm about why the nerves can kick in at a particular age, often early teens, not always.
Yeah. Well, the id is the first. As Freud described it, the id is the first sort of the experience of the baby, and it's completely non-verbal, pre-verbal. In fact, in the first 6 months, it's completely merged with the mother. It doesn't know it's different from the mother. Then it starts to realize that we start to realize we're a separate person, and the ego starts to develop. The ego wants to be seen as having an identity and to be loved, appreciated, given affection, all of these things. And then around age 4 or 5, the superego starts to come in, because it the id just wants everything it wants straight away. As we know, young children, they want food now, they want sleep, they want to play. The ego wants to be seen, but the superego comes in because it realizes that there's got to be some kind of controlling mechanism to fit into society, to fit into the family. And the messages given by parents or those important carers become internalized. So, the example I often give is the boy who cries when maybe his toy is taken away from him, but is then judged for that. No, boys shouldn't cry. And that happens many, many, many times, so that the boy stops crying, and then he suppresses that feeling that he ever wanted to cry. And he locks away something inside himself, never to be seen again, and becomes a little hard. And that's the superego locking down those emotions. But the superego, ultimately, the good thing about the super, it's our conscience, it's our higher self, it's our discipline. So if we actually develop a relationship with it, we come back to that feeling, oh, I shouldn't cry, and stay with that. And then we drop into that real beautiful sensitivity in the heart. That becomes available in our music. And that actually makes us strong, because this is me. No one can take me away from me. I know who I am. And it's the Mount Ararat. It's a good symbol. It's my stability. It's that I am being me, and no one can take that away from me. And in fact, it's such a beautiful thing to share myself with others as a musician.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anna. Oh, Laura's got a question. Go on, Laura.
Yes. Yeah, well, I was going to chip in with something, actually, because something Anna said is so really powerful. Nobody can take me away from me. And tying that back, I keep thinking with my teaching head of, Nicole, your question earlier, of when you have the advanced students, how do you teach them these, getting in touch with it and then putting it through and being able to access it on the stage? And metaphorically, there's, it's like the constellations in the night sky are far more than their individual components. But the individual components are kind of like all the technical things that we work on when we prepare a piece. But we have to move beyond their individual, what's it made of and all this, to get the figure of that metaphoric bear in the sky, or, that hunter. But the real, like, one challenge, not the real challenge, one of the real challenges is for students, how, as language-based people and someone who may not have experienced the idea of knowing who they are, because somebody may not have given them the permission to explore their voice, certainly in music, then we've got to go through these multiple layers of translation almost as music teachers, which can be a wonderful gift and a wonderful sort of ease to navigate, but also hugely challenging, because, how do you, in asking, why would you do this? How does this make you feel? Sometimes I find students don't know how to answer. So sometimes it's through a something else that they're, in the safe space of the lesson, allowed to experience some of that musical self-discovery for the first time. So then what they learn is to notice it, and then their awareness grows. Then maybe they can put the pieces together a bit later. But that was my teaching head.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the more we're in touch with ourselves again, the more we can tune into that student. Because when you were describing the constellations, and the thought came to me that the student is the constellations, is also the black sky. It's the entire sky is the student. that whole holding of the sky is the student. And I have found that really tuning in on a feeling level to the student and then giving that attention. I really felt you expressing that, and giving them attention about it really encourages them to feel it in themselves. And I also want to say that I, as a practitioner, would love to work with teachers like you, and that, when students are kind of old enough and, it's possible to send them to someone like me, as just to sort of look at something more particularly, and then hopefully that then supports what a teacher like you is doing. But you might also choose to get to know your own inner critic and take on that role yourself. But it's absolutely, the more you can feel yourself, you tune into them, not just what they're playing, but what they're feeling, and you can bring that out of them for sure.
And through the knowing you get to know the for me at least, by recognizing the voices of my inner critic and things, the voices of teachers and people who expect things that past my own expectations. I've become more aware of the power of language and the words that I choose, perhaps with students. Because if I'm the one leaving the imprints on them, then I want to make sure that I'm choosing carefully what those imprints are. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's that kind of awareness is so supportive in it for a student, for a teacher like you to have that kind of awareness and that kind of care. But there is also a non-verbal support where you're just feeling them, you're just empathizing with them, and you're with them. They can feel you're with them, and that they don't even know it's happening really. But you just love them. You just want to support them, and the more you kind of want to, the more you just do. You don't even know how, if you know what I mean.
Thanks so much, Anna. That's absolutely brilliant. I bet, I certainly want a one-to-one with Anna, because I think I've got a lot of issues I need to work through. But if anybody does want to actually see her, you can. You can go on to her page on Musical Orbit. Sheila's going to put the link into the Facebook page now. And you can actually have some time one-to-one with Anna, sure. Which for those people who suffer from an overactive inner critic, very helpful. We haven't got much time left, so I just wanted to briefly, completely change the subject. Sorry, bam, like that. Laura, you're going to be joining us on the CPD sessions, June the 10th to the 12th. Are there still any bursaries left for us to teachers fill for that?
Yes, plenty of bursaries left. So just go to the website and apply.
Brilliant. So Laura, tell us what you're going to be doing on the CPD sessions.
Lots of technique, lots and lots of technique. So this is going to be like total body fitness, except for, left hand, right hand, and the musical holistic thing as well. And one of the things that that is going to be a challenge to explore, but something to integrate. I mean, it's going to be, the online thing is difficult. The way you teach technique, if everybody was in the same room, is slightly different. So, for example, the clarity with which I hope to explain things, from everything from the anatomical way that our fingers lift and fall, the dexterity required, the patterns, the training regimes and routines and references, the music that we might use, to the nuance of motion. Because even if like Anna was saying, sometimes when you're with someone, you're guided to see and hear different aspects of their playing that, though Zoom is amazing, it's not quite the same as being there live. So as a teacher, so this will be as much a technical thing as a sort of teaching masterclass, hopefully, of directing people what to look at, how to feel, giving as much information so that they too can understand the technical concepts, as well as how to apply them to their own playing, the playing of their students, and then to various repertoire examples and putting it together. So we're going to do shifting, vibrato, finger dexterity and lightness of touch, speed, hand shapes, how they get integrated, games with scales, because why not? We love scales. Different bowing exercises, and I brought one little thing in case anybody wants a A foreshadow. One of my best vibrato fun toys is the wonderful old egg shaker. And, just an egg. It's a wooden egg.
Oh,
But
it's a potato.
no, it's a big egg. But you know what I discovered? This is so fun because you can also use a Tic Tac box or a box of matches, but don't set your instrument on fire. If you use a sock and cut off the toe, so there's the sock, then when you put the egg in your arm, in your sleeve, in your sock, this is, of course, you strap the egg on, and you love this. It does look like I've got a proper deformity.
A ganglion.
But it's a sock with no toe is a must-have for these, for our technique sessions.
But why?
And,
Why? Do you want to sort of not rattle it, or what's the plan?
Oh no, you do want to rattle it. So for cellos, as opposed to violins have arm, finger, wrist vibrato, cellos want the arm, because if we don't use the whole arm, we limit the range of motion. It's like having one of those bicycles with only one gear. And sometimes it's really hard work, and but you got one gear, so your speed is kind of fast. So when you use your whole arm, you can control all the dimensions of the vibrato. It can go very wide and slow. It can go fast and narrow. And what this means is we've got all the colors of the rainbow at our disposal. But learning to control these things in a technical way and understanding them then means we're in a position to see the constellations that we know exist and then paint our own in the sky. That's the idea.
I love it. A rainbow wrist. It's amazing. So now I'm going to set everybody a challenge. Please send in to us. What are your props for teaching? Right. I know my dad's got a nasty one involving blue tack and a drawing pin, but anyway, send us in. Yeah, it's a nasty one, that one. And I myself, I'm a ruler down there for violins to stop that, But anyway, do send them in. There will be no prize for the winner, but we will read your name out next week. Yay! So please do send those in if you could. That'd be lovely. Thank you so much, everybody. Phil, do you have any housekeeping we need to know for the end of this week?
No, just to say, unfortunately, if you've not heard, we've had to cancel the summer school in August. We were hoping to make it work, but the reality is we're going to have to stay online a little longer. So hopefully you'll join us in June. And next week's guest is the upper strings. Simon Cartledge will be joining us to talk about his June sessions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. It's really nice to see so many of you joining us week after week. Thank you very much. If there's particular topics you want us to cover, perhaps you could let us know and we'll see if we can accommodate them. So thank you very much to Professor Laura Ritchie from Chichester University, Phil Aird from World End, and Anna McDonald from Armenia. Way! Have a safe week, everybody, and we'll see you next Friday at 7 o'clock. Bye.
Bye.